Sharon Bibby, and tonight we're going to talk about how to frame our art. Before I begin with the framing, I want to share with you that we in CAS have about 65 exhibits per year. It's a lot of art and a lot of volunteers, so that's why we've emphasized the importance of being on time and how to label and all the things that you need to know to show with CAS and in exhibits outside of CAS. Before we get into the actual framing, once again, I want to talk to you about materials. It's best to use the best materials that you can afford. If some canvases don't hold up as well, you might want to check and make sure that it's going to not sag over time. But the paints are important. Get the best you can get. And another thing that artists tend to think is they're a starving artist. There are no starving artists. Get rid of that attitude, but take on an attitude that this is my business and I'm going to make it the best I can do. Also, one of the things that you need to know is how you're going to price your art. The frame is part of the cost of putting a painting together ready to hang. The paint is part of it and the canvas. So keep track of the cost so that you pretty much know how much it's going to cost you. And there's a couple of ways of pricing your artwork. You can do it by the square inch, or you can do it as cost plus. If it's square inch, let's say 20 by 16 would equal 320 square inches. And starting out, not everybody can sell their work at $6 a square inch, but some people do. You need to decide what the market will bear for your artwork. For simplicity's sake, I just said 50 cents a square inch. So for a 16 by 20, that would equal $160 retail. Then compare that to your total cost. Are you making a profit? You need to, that's very important if you're going to sell your work, is to try to make a profit so that you can buy more art supplies and paint more. If it's a cost plus, let's say that you've got $50 in expense and you want to make 100% profit. And that's not unreasonable because that's how you get paid for your time. So you'd automatically say, well, that painting is going to be at least $100. Now, these are just simple computations. In real life, you would use your realistic figures, but the important thing is not only know what it's costing you, but keep your receipts. Because when you start making sales, then it's going to affect, Uncle Sam. Martha just talked about the gallery style framing, or gallery style canvases. That has eliminated a lot of the framing that we do these days. If you're going to do the gallery style canvases, make sure that the sides, top and bottom, are finished. Also, a gallery style canvas really should be at least 1.5 inches. I think they might start at 1 inch, but 1.5 inches, I think some of them are even 3 inches. When you use the 3/4 inch canvases and they're not framed, they tend to look unfinished in a juried show. So keep that in mind when you're selecting your canvases, how thick they are and how you're going to finish them off. Framing is very important though, because many of the paintings still require frame. And they're all the 3/4, so there's staples in there. Remember how they used to be? Something like this has to be in a frame. I'm going to turn this around and talk about the back of a painting. One of the things that is very important is this right here. It needs to be placed on the back so that when it's hanging, your hanger will not show. That is one thing that we do not like to see in an exhibit, is the hanger showing. Also, some of the canvases that are pre-made, or the frames that are pre-made, come with that little sawtooth. Throw it away. We cannot accept any sawtooth hanger in any of our exhibits. Another thing that Martha had mentioned is identifying your artwork in case it is lost or misplaced, or if we should need to contact you during the installation of the exhibit. We need to know the title, your name, and back when I did this one, I hadn't added a contact point, but now that I'm showing in more exhibits, I like to put either my phone number or my email address back here. And you can write on the board or the wood of the canvas. Sometimes I do it right on the canvas. I even use a black magic marker and it does not soak through. So make sure that that if we need to contact you, we can do so by looking at your painting. There's a lot of different ways of hanging and framing a piece of art. Generally, if it's an oil, acrylic, or a photograph, you're going to, well, not on the photograph, take that back. I look at these photographers when I say this. Oil and acrylic, generally you're going to have a frame or you're going to have a gallery wrap canvas. For pastels, watercolors, and photographs, they have to be framed. They have glass on them, and they probably will have mats. Now, I notice with pastels, a lot of the pastel artists are using the French style, which takes the pastel all the way to the frame, and the glass lays directly on top of the pastel. The secret to keep the pastel off of the glass is to beat the heck out of the back of the pastel so that all the dust falls off. Then when you put the glass on it, it stays looking nice. And if it's done right, it looks very nice. But generally a pastel you will see with at least one mat. I kind of like a double mat on most things, but most of the time for a juried show, you need to have either white or off-white mats. Colored mats don't jury well.
A lot of times they'll tell you in the call for art.
Yes, in the call for art it will tell you. Fabric art is something that I think is so beautiful, but we need to keep in mind about the hanger showing. So I suggest putting fabric art, attach it to at least a frame where you can put a hanger on the back, and then the hook won't show. Shadow boxing is another form of framing where you have small objects that you want to put into the art, and if it's very large at all, it's going to be heavy. A shadow box is going to be probably at least this deep, and it's going to have glass on it. It may have mats. You don't know what all it's going to have, but because they're heavy and because we have difficulty in getting some of those larger pieces hung well, CAS is going to limit all paintings, all art objects that's going to go on the wall to 15 pounds.
15.
And one of the things about framing, it should fit your art. For example, if you're doing portraits, you've got the size of the face, and then you want to put a skinny little frame on it, it really doesn't look nice. So if you have questions about the right frame for that piece of art, take it in and talk, whether you get the frame at, let's say, at one of the framing shops or not, at least get some advice from them. If the frame, we all use our frames over and over, I'm sure, and but we need to keep in mind that they do show wear after a while, and it might be best to trade one out and get you a new frame. Sometimes the art that's in a frame, especially those metal frames, and especially if it's plexiglass, sometimes that just wiggles around. If a person is interested in buying your art and it's loose in the frame, they're probably not going to buy it. They may ask you to reframe it for them or talk to you about it, but probably will not buy it if that is loose in the frame. If the glass is dirty, it's not going to sell. And CAS really doesn't want to hang any art that has dirt and dust. I actually took a frame out of my garage today, and I was going to bring it because it was really dirty and dusty, to show you how sometimes art can appear in one of our exhibits that we just can't do. But then I decided I didn't want to get dirty, and I left it at home. And like I said, always identify your work. And one of the things that I have learned over the years with framing and hanging shows is if the back of your painting, on the back of the frame and the canvas, if it's dirty, it tells a lot about you. And we had a difficult time in getting some of our artwork hung in a show that had lots of mirrors, and it showed the back of the paintings, and it had paint on the back, it had sticky tags and stuff like that. So keep in mind the back of the frame needs to be as neat cut. I have had a big scar on my arm for a long time for hanging a large painting that was loose in the frame, and the wire was very sharp. And when you're hanging a very large painting, especially if you're a little on the short side like me, you kind of get it hooked on there, and then you kind of straighten it out. And when that was sliding around, it just slid down my arm, and I literally was bleeding. But here is, see how this is, it's loose enough that you can put your hand back and get it on the hook. And when it's taut or tight, it hangs flat on the wall, it doesn't lean forward. So that's another little trick. Today I was practicing with the wires on the ends, and I took a pair of pliers and just mashed the heck out of it. And finally I got it to where it was not real sharp. I didn't do it on this one, but Jim has a show going up in the morning at Cypress Grill, so I was trying to get the work ready for that. Another thing, like Martha was saying, you can wrap painter's tape around these until the hard, rough edges don't hurt you. If it hurts, it really hurts, I can tell you. But
masking tape works really well.
Masking tape, painter's tape, whatever you have, but just make sure it's safe, because it can hurt people. But another thing about having good wire is making sure that these brackets right here are in there well. We have had some paintings that came in that the little screws that you screwed in weren't strong enough, and it wasn't safe. And you don't want something that you spent time painting and that you're very proud of it, and then for it to fall off the wall and get damaged. So let's go ahead and open this up now for questions and answers.